Hi, everyone. Welcome to our October 2023 Fifth Window Spotlight. My name is Charlene Platon, CEO and co-founder of Fifth Window, and we host these monthly spotlights to highlight nurses and their unique journeys of well-being and self-care, and to also talk about the diverse profession of nursing. And so for today's spotlight, we are live streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them throughout this conversation. And you can also refer to this live stream after when it's all done and recorded, and go ahead and refer to this after. But right now, I would like to go ahead and introduce our Fifth Window team and also our guest speaker. So we'll start with our team, and I'll go ahead and have Kathy introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. It's Kathy Schaefer, registered nurse, compassion fatigue professional. I am a little fatigued from last night's game, and also co-founder of Fifth Window.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. So, super honored to welcome our October 2023 Spotlight guest, Joy Rivera, also known as Nurse Joy. And Joy is a first-generation Latina nurse. She has been a licensed practical nurse, or LPN, for 4 years, with experience in skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, and home health. Joy is a new graduate medical surgical pulmonary nurse resident, and in her free time, she enjoys spending time with family, getting outside to keep herself grounded, and reading romantic novels and mystery novels. And Joy is also a nurse advocate and wellness advocate, and she shares her experiences in nursing on social media, and you may know her under her handle, Nursing with Joy. We're so excited to have you here, Joy. Thank you for being here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here and answer all the questions. So, everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat. I will answer them to the best of my abilities.
Yes, so excited. And it was so great to meet you also in person at the IntelliCare retreat back in May. I can't believe that was so long ago now.
I know. I was like thinking about that this morning. I was like, wow, and I actually got to meet you in person because a lot of social media networking things that I do, I don't get the chance to meet everyone in person, unfortunately. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was amazing, and super excited to dive into your nursing journey. And I just want to start too with first, what initially inspired you to nursing, or can you walk us through how you got into nursing in the first place?
Yeah, so in 2015 to 2016, I was getting my associate's degree just in general studies. Didn't really know what I wanted to do at that time, if I'll be honest. I was just graduated high school. I was like, okay, I need to get my first degree, even if I don't know necessarily what it's going to be in. So I remember I had a class, it's called Student Success. And I was like, this class is really silly. Why do I need to take this class? But one of the classes or the assignments, they wanted you to think about potential careers. And so at that time I was considering nursing and pharmacy, which yes, it's all healthcare, but completely different. And so I went to a hospital and I volunteered on the mother baby unit, and I delivered some flowers. And I was also working at the desk to let people in. And then I also got to see the process of tags, when moms and babies get to go home. And I just remember that patient interaction, as a volunteer. And I was like, yep, this is it. I'm sold. I'm going to be a nurse. I don't know how I'm going to do it, because I was going to be the first in my family to be in the healthcare field. But that little moment was so big for me. And then just from there, I had applied for a nursing generic program in the area. I did horrible. I withdrew because I wasn't really learning anything, and I was barely getting by. So at that time, I withdrew and enrolled in a LPN program. That was 11 months. So I was working as a pharmacy tech, which is crazy too, because I was considering pharmacy. So I was working as a pharmacy tech. I think I had school 7 to 3, and then I would work 5 to 10. And that was like my schedule, like Monday through Friday for 11 months. And it was really crazy. But then after that, I was like, okay, we're going to work a little bit so I can get like hands-on critical thinking, get all that going. So in 6 months after being at LPN, which is like when I started working in like skilled nursing facility, I decided to go back to school, but for the transition program, which is like LPN to RN. So it kind of like chops the time in half. It still ends up being about the same as far as like what a regular RN program would be if you like break it down from the LPN to the bridge program. But I failed out of that program. So I was devastated. And I was like, okay, we're going to try one more time, this whole RN thing. And if I don't pass, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. So then I applied for the program out here on a whim. And I was like, okay, I could get waitlisted or I could get like not accepted. But I got accepted. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I'm moving. So everything was kind of chaotic, but I'm glad because I feel like everything happens for a reason. And like, I'm so blessed. I have like a job that I love. I didn't think I was going to be a medical surgical nurse and pulmonary, definitely not pulmonary. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, all right, we're going to work with test tubes and heparin drips, but it's okay. We're going to do it and we're going to love it. But yeah, it wasn't like something that I felt like I was drawn to, or not something that I can be like my mom, sister, grandmother all did. So I think for me as a first generation Latina nurse, especially, I feel like my family really admires me for being so like ambitious and goal driven. But in the same time, it was hard because I didn't have anyone to be like, okay, what are these steps? And I think if I would have known like straight out the gate, okay, let's do LPN to RN, I would have saved myself 3 years versus like having so many struggles. And like even advisors, like they would tell me to enroll in one class and then I would enroll and they're like, oh, you actually don't need that class. So I feel like I didn't have anybody like advocating for me well enough. So it made me like drag out my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that resonates with so many people, who might be listening, and I'm sure us as well, because nursing has so many different paths and it can go in so many different directions. So it's really great to hear about how that happened for you and how it led you to this current path. I mean, especially for different specialties, like sometimes you think you like one specialty and then you end up in a really different one. So really great to hear about that. And Kathy, did you want to add to that too?
Well, yes. So, Joy, you may not know this, but I'm an associate professor at a college in Philadelphia. And I am always fascinated when I hear students' journeys of coming to nursing school and moving through nursing school, because I think that we're still very stuck in an old way of teaching students. And we have not really opened up our eyes to what our students go through and struggle. Outside pressures like working and it's not the traditional student who goes to high school and then to college. For me, I see a lot of young parents, right? A lot of who will have children and they have to. So those outside struggles and trying to be a good student is hard, right? And I think I have to say, I love that you share your story, because I think that so many even of my students could really look to you to say, oh my gosh, like I'm not the only one who struggled in a class. I'm not the only one who couldn't handle taking like 3 science classes at one time, because I don't think we talk about that enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question to you is, were there any nurses or even anyone around that, resembled you or your path that you could identify with to say, or did you feel like you were struggling all by yourself?
That's a great question. So I don't think I shared my journey when I was struggling until after I got out of my struggle. So for a lot of people, like even in my RN program, like everyone's like, you're not going to share that you're in RN school right now. And I was like, I'm just afraid that I'm going to fail again. And I'm okay with sharing that I failed, and I was transparent that I failed the NCLEX the first time, but just so that people don't think like, oh, this girl's got it all together, because I don't. I'm just I'm very big on my faith and my relationship with God, and I have a great support system with my mom. Like my mom is like my cheerleader. She's like, okay, you got knocked down, but get back up. Like you're gonna get there. You just can't give up on yourself. So I don't think there was ever a nurse that I was like, oh my gosh, thank God, like you understand what I'm going through. But I think there was like also situations of like, there was students in my class that like were moms or, you know, maybe grieving. And like, I was like, okay, maybe they're not struggling like I am, but like everyone is struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is where taking care of our own mental wellness really has to begin, because we model this attitude and this belief system that we are made of steel, nothing bothers us. We were successful on the first try. We, you know, and we were destined to do this. Where if we really start to take care of our students and teach them about mental wellness, and it's okay that you're struggling, you know, you should share, right? Or maybe we allow or have allowances for when students struggle, maybe we wouldn't see so much burnout within the first 3 years of nursing school, because we've already, I mean, in practice, because we've already started to burn them out in nursing school.
I agree.
And
Mhm.
I want to commend you, because listen, Charlene and I have said this before on this program. Our first journeys out in college were not successful either. Like we didn't, right?
No.
Exactly, right? You know, I make no bones about it now, but at the time, just like you, it's a little embarrassing to share with people, especially when you have people who don't want to share around you and they're very high achievers, and you think, oh my God, they're so smart. And if, you know, okay, like I can't say that I didn't do well in an exam. I have to kind of go with the flow. But I think the more that we share that it's okay, right? And just like Joseph Diaz has said in the comments, that it's okay to know what you want and you'll get there eventually. You just have to keep trying. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I don't know much about your platform, but I hope you share that all the time on your platform, because I think for first generation students, it's even harder to accept not being successful the first time out.
Agreed.
Mhm. And actually, in talking about your journey as a first generation nurse, is there anything that has been really surprising about that journey, or I guess something that you didn't really expect as you've been pursuing this work?
Ooh, yeah, a lot of things. So it's always funny. So like speaking of mental health, so my RN program, like my bridge program, my mental health class, like I can honestly tell you, I don't feel like I learned anything.
Wow.
Like I felt like my professor, her teaching style, like she would lecture one way and then the exam would be one way. And like honestly, by the grace of God, I passed that course. But the way that they teach you and then the way that like patients present in real life are completely different. But what's interesting to me is that like the patients that I've seen, especially as like a LPN, I can kind of identify what their diagnosis is, even though we don't diagnose as nurses, guys. Disclaimer, okay? I'm not a doctor. But I can tell from their symptoms what their diagnosis is, because now with experience, I've like been familiar, and like I can see a drug and be like, oh yeah, that's for this. But in school, it's so different. And like I think school and nursing is completely different. Like, yeah, they teach you the fundamentals, but when they put you out there in the real world, they're like, oh yeah, we don't do this like this. And even like with the skills, so like the past 2 days I've done like clinical skills, and we were doing trach care, and they're like, yeah, well, we're telling them like, yeah, in school they teach you, you know, you do continuous suction and you twirl it so that, you know, you're getting all the gunk out. And the respiratory therapist was like, yeah, you don't have to do that. I was like, okay, well, that's just nursing. Like you're flexible, and sometimes the way you're taught and the way that things are now done are just different, and you just go with the flow. But a lot of my followers and like even friends, even they don't know that like in my last semester, which was probably like March to April, let's say like March to June, I was in therapy myself. It was my first time. I just felt like broken because a lot of the
Mm.
relationships in that time, and then like um just like the end of school and working while also being in school and preceptor, like it was just exhausting, and I felt like my battery was like on E. And so I was like, who can I talk to that will listen unbiasedly and like give me some advice? I didn't like my therapist, I'll be honest.
Mm.
I felt like he heard me, but we didn't have like an emotional connection. So it
Mm.
like discouraged me from like going back. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not a quitter. Like, have to see this through. But I just couldn't because I was like, I just feel like I'm wasting my time. But I recently looked into a new therapist. So I'm hoping that it'll go better this time. But I did enjoy that it was virtual because I feel like virtual counseling is very convenient for people. Um, and I'm just saying that so that people can think like you can have life going well and it's still okay to like seek therapy. Like therapy doesn't have to mean that you're like depressed and like on the
Mhm.
edge. It can just mean that like, hey, I need some help and I'm
Mhm.
interested in self-care and my overall like awareness and just having self-awareness to know like I need some help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when we do pursue our nursing journeys, we really don't realize all the challenges that can come and all the, obstacles, twists and turns. Especially in nursing school, it's really hard, and I think people don't anticipate that.
Mhm.
I still have my friends who are currently pursuing nursing school who tell me like, my professors are really hard on me. Like it's just not that supportive kind of nurturing kind of encouraging type of environment that really encourages people to learn and to thrive. I think more in that sense, especially with mental health. But I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with that because it's so important. And thank you for sharing your experiences with therapy because you know I think that therapy is a great tool
Mhm.
and that all nurses should do therapy in some part of their journey. I started therapy also during nursing school because it's a lot to take all of that on. So I think it's great that you did that. With therapy, just like you said, it could take some time to
Mm.
find the right person to be your practitioner there, and it really is like a marriage, just like how we choose our friends and we choose our schools and things, we have to choose our therapists, and in that they're a great fit for us. So I think there's nothing wrong with not finding the right therapist the first time, and I absolutely think it's worth finding, trying again, and there's so many different types of therapies and people out there. So definitely great to see that you're thinking about that. And I see that we have some comments in the chat. I think you might have been taking a look, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's great to see that. And um, one thing I wanted to ask for too, in your work as a licensed practical nurse, some people who are listening to the call, they might be really familiar with registered nurse as a term, but not so much LPN. Can you share more about your work as an LPN and the settings that you practice in? I think you shared a little bit about that already, but yeah, can you tell us more about your work as an LPN?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I do. I did notice when I was at LPN that everyone's like registered nurse, right? And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like now I gotta explain to you. Now I gotta educate you on what an LPN is. The running joke is like LPN is a low paid nurse and a registered nurse is like a rich nurse. I can agree with that in a sense. It depends where what you do because I've done agency and I've also done staff. But in reality, the expectation is kind of the same. It's just as an LPN, there's things that I can't do versus like now as a registered nurse, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. But as an LPN, so you have a lot of opportunity. For me, I just worked in skilled nursing facilities, assisted living, and home health. But there's also dialysis. I know during COVID, people were giving vaccines. You can work in clinics. You can work. Um, there's it's similar to a clinic. I can't think of the word right now, but it's like a Monday to Friday, like you're triaging patients. There's a lot more. You can work in corrections. I personally did not want to do that, but to each his own. I've met some incredible nurses that I'm like, you worked in corrections? You're great. It takes a special person. But yeah, there's a lot more opportunity than people think. The only difference is, so LPN, you go to school for 11 to 12 months and you get a certificate, but you're still required to take the board exam just like a registered nurse would. Versus a registered nurse, it can be an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, and you're also required to take the board exam. So as an LPN, you're only allowed to give or start IVs and give IV medication if you have that certification, which when I got out of school, they offered the certification. So I did it like right away. And so I noticed like a lot of time when I was working the nursing home, they're like, oh, you know how to start IVs? Like you can give IV medication. I'm like, yeah, I'm IV certified. They're like, oh, okay, well, can you do this for me? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And then as a registered nurse, you're only able to do like blood transfusions if it's like or registered nurses. So like that was another thing that I noticed as an LPN. That's something I definitely couldn't do. But the opportunities are endless. I think in other states, I've noticed like it's more popular than it is in Florida, but it is a thing in Florida, guys. Like you can definitely, and I tell people, I'm like, if you don't know if you want to be a nurse, I would suggest going that route first because it's a shorter duration of time. And then once you get experience, you're like, okay, this is for me or this is not for me. But you still have that in your back pocket if you want to do like a per diem job or still do a different career. And you can't say that you wasted time because having a nursing license isn't a waste of time. It's a great tool to have just because a lot of people say like it's a job that there'll always be in demand. And it's true. That's not why I got into nursing, but it's true. So you always have a job in case, your other career journey, it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And if you have that like desire to take care of people, then I think a lot of people that do end up doing it, they don't regret it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing about that. It's true, you can do a lot of different things as an LPN. You can practice in quite a few settings. And
Mhm.
one of the things that you've been able to do is also work with platforms like IntelliCare. And how has that experience been? Because it sounds like something that a lot of people might not be aware of or not even know that they could do things like that nowadays.
Yeah, so that is like so crazy to me, the fact that I have like such a platform, like a big platform. Like even now, like when my friends, like I always tell them, like, hey, before you follow me, just remember I'm still your friend, okay? And they laugh and they're like, why are you like some celebrity? I'm like, no, I'm just a normal person. And then they see my followers and they're like, Joy, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I'm just a normal person, I promise. But when I was starting my nursing journey, like 4 years ago, I downloaded Instagram and I was like, okay, I'm just going to document my whole journey. I was like, if I can get some free scrubs, this would be so cool. Just the scrubs, guys. That's all I wanted. Okay. And because scrubs are expensive. Okay. For everyone that doesn't know. And I still don't have like a brand ambassador deal with any scrubs. Like I've done a lot of like collaborations, but I don't have like a set one, which is okay with me now because now I just have to wear navy. Like I'm going to breathe, eat, and sleep in navy scrubs versus like having a different, variety of colors I can wear, which is okay. But now I like look at all my scrubs and I'm like, dang, I can't even wear you guys unless I go to like the nursing home again or private duty. But it was just that, like, just consistency of like, hey, I'm gonna share this, I'm gonna share this. And like there's a lot of times now where I like post things and it doesn't get engagement. And it's just like, you gotta just keep trying because like there was like a video of me just studying in the airport, and it was like 20,000 views. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Like, what is this?
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, so you never know. Like, there might be one person or a couple people that like it, and then there's going to be some that just don't. So my advice would be like, just go for it and just be consistent, because eventually it will grow. And they say there's like algorithms and trends and all this stuff that you can do too. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I don't necessarily pay attention to that. I just try to post things that are true to me, so that people can like know that it's my personality and like what I want to show, and things that I'm not afraid to share. But in telecare, I actually like picked up shifts, like worked for IntelliCare while I was in school, because I was doing agency nursing, which is like travel nursing, but it was locally. So I would go to certain nursing homes, and as an agency nurse, you get your assignment and you figure everything else out. So because I had worked staff for 2 years, I was already familiar with like, okay, this is how you take report, and these are the things that you ask. And if you're good with time management, like you can thrive in any situation. So that's what I was doing. Um, and I don't really remember how they had asked me. Oh, I had won a free cruise, actually, a free cruise for Nurses Week. And
Wow.
and
Oh,
I
was
was
it
like,
Intelli at Sea, I think, right? Or
yes.
no?
Yes.
Oh,
And I was
amazing. That's
like,
amazing.
oh my gosh, how did I win this? How did they pick me?
Oh, how
Like, I was like,
cool.
it was the best time of my life. And I think from there is like when after that, like I had went to they had did like a social event, and then I was like meeting everyone that was like more than just like the district person. Like I was like making sure that I was introduced with everyone that was like higher up within the company. And then I think is when I got the opportunity, like, hey, we would love for you to be a brand ambassador. And I was like, why not? I was like, love you guys. You guys are great. They're a great company. They're very great with communication, like not even just with like my working side, which I think is funny, because I'm like, when I tell people about IntelliCare, I'm like, no, I actually worked for them. Like I can vouch as an employee, like as a nurse, but I can also vouch like on the brand side of like communication and just how they treat their employees overall. They're great. I love them. And I was so glad to go to the convention that they had this year. That was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. It was so much fun. It was just so great to see a convention that was only focused on nursing well-being. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how, like when I was in training nursing school, never like you'd never ever see
Yeah.
anything like that. It was just so great to see how things have been progressing in this direction where wellness is a bigger focus in the healthcare space. But it was a great community of people,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciate seeing you there and seeing the other IntelliPros and other nurses who are just really big advocates of nursing wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And before we talk a little bit more about your own wellness journey, one thing I wanted to ask you too was about how your journey has been as a nursing resident, as a medical surgical pulmonary resident, because I think people might be interested in nursing residency, or they might be interested in how you found that specialty. Can you share a little bit about that? Yeah, and how that's going.
Yeah. So I am in well, I guess if you will say like week 3. So it's a year-long program.
Mhm.
When so they had like it was like an open interview. So you could go to each specialty and interview with the managers and team leads. And I was just like going down the list. I was like medical surgical, then it was PCU, then it was neuro. And the managers actually stuck out to me. So
Hmm.
because of the connection, because I know like sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I really wanted this. But then if you're not a good fit for that team, then it kind of just all goes out the window. And that's kind of what happened with me. I was like really stuck on PCU. I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like no one's gonna change my mind. And then I met the managers, and I was like, I don't think we're a good fit.
Hmm.
So I ended up choosing medical surgical pulmonary, which I didn't know was pulmonary. I thought it was just medical surgical. So it was like, I got my offer letter. I was like, all right, it's okay. We're going to keep doing it. But at first, I knew I wanted to do a year anyways, because I was like, okay, I want to be in the hospital at least a year to two, just because I want to be very comfortable and confident in my skills. So the program is a little different. The first week was like a lot of like HR and policies and do's and don'ts. And then the second week I was able to shadow a tech. So that was very nice to see how they manage their time and just like how much they really do for the nurses. I always say, like, if you have good techs, then you're going to have a good day regardless. Because like if you have that good teamwork, like you will not drown. So I always make sure my relationship with my CNAs is really big. And then these last 2 days, because it's 3 days a week, 3 12s, which is like standard for like nursing, registered nursing. I know as an LPN, I work 12s and 8s, but these last 2 days were skills. So like wound care, catheter insertion, central line teaching, how to transition your patient's care, like when you're discharging them, how to address their needs when you're in the room, and how to like do it quickly, how to give report within like 2 minutes. So little workshops like that. And then my preceptor, which is like going to be my best friend for the next couple months, that starts on Sunday. So I'm excited. So the rest of the program, I guess you would say, like I have like 3 to 4 months of training where I'm with my preceptor until I'm on the floor by myself. And then the rest of that will be like, I know I have a project that I have to do. It's evidence-based. So that'll be also within that year that I have to do it, learning about EKGs. So they have like classes that are also like in our schedule, but we'll be working 3 12s and then they kind of like schedule them around it. So I'm excited. I'm like a very like structured person. Like I like to know what I'm getting into. So they kind of like laid it out for us nice and dry. And I was like, great, we can do this.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear. And it's always nice. I feel like if I think people may not always get the opportunity or may not always know about nursing residency
Mm-hmm.
programs. It sounds like they've really expanded to a lot of different specialties this time around.
Mhm.
A lot more than just like the typical ones you might see out there. So it's really cool to see that there were so many different ones that you had a chance to learn about.
Mhm.
Um, and was there any kind of advice you wanted to share for anyone who's interested in those residency programs, or anything else you'd want to share about them in general?
Yeah, so I know as far as like ICU, ER, NICU, those specialties, they told us like they're really hard to get into, but like after 6 months of training, you have the opportunity if you like want to, that you can like train or like have, they will basically build you up so that you can be a candidate for that.
Hmm.
So I just want to tell people, like, even if you don't get what you want initially, like don't get discouraged, like talk with the people that you need to talk to, like so that you can get where you want to go. I would say, like, especially for residents, they like that if you're out of school with less than 2 months experience so that they can grow you. But it is a commitment of a year. So I think for a lot of people, they're like, oh, a year is a long time. I would say do it because um, you're just going to learn everything the way that you should learn it. And a year is going to go by so fast. So just go for it. And if you're cautious about it, I would say go on the floor that you're interested in working on and like just talk to a couple people and see what their feedback is, because that's what I did. And I was like, okay, like they're gonna tell you the truth. They're not gonna tell you like they're, it's not like they go to them and they're like, hey, we're gonna have all these people interviewing, like say the right things. Like they're gonna tell you the truth. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also a nurse that was a byproduct of a nursing residency, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved it. Was just such, I never regretted it. It was such a great experience. So highly encourage anyone who's thinking about it to, try it out, apply, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Um, and then my last question too, before we kind of transition to wellness, I wanted to talk about, with your platforms, do you have other major platforms that you're on too besides Instagram, or do you mostly focus on Instagram, or have you been looking into other social media platforms as well?
So I do have TikTok and YouTube. I try to keep them all consistent as far as like my handle, Nursing with Joy. Um, it's just so hard to keep up with all of them. So, like for a lot of people that do follow me on TikTok, it is a mirror of my Instagram, like to the best of my ability, just because I'm like it. I like for it to be consistent, and it is challenging to do different content. Um, it just is hard. Like I'm also like working, and now I'm in my BSN program. So,
Oh,
and then
yay!
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So, and then like outside of that, I'm like trying to make sure that all my relationships, like with my family and everyone, is like still stable and still like making time for everyone. So, yeah, it's just hard, but ideally, I do try to keep it the same. So I do have YouTube and TikTok, but I did consider making a TikTok that is like not Nursing with Joy, so that can be like my personal life. But again, it's like it's just a lot.
It is a lot. It's hard to maintain just one account. So I really like kudos to, to doing those other platforms as well and to, getting your name and voice out there because I know that's really hard in general for nurses to kind of make that leap to have your face out there, your voice out there. And I think there's a lot of power in social media, getting a lot of nurses on different platforms. So I think it's really inspiring that you do that, and it is a lot of work, but it's great that you're able to inspire so many people on your platform. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing that and for being you.
Thank you.
I do also appreciate that you mentioned when you were interviewing that when you interviewed with the nurses managers, you're like, this might not be a fit for me because I always encourage my nursing students, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. You want it to be a good fit. And just like you said, I really want to be a cardiac ICU nurse. And maybe just the vibe of the way the unit runs is just not your vibe, right? And being able
Mhm.
to I say, okay, but I really like these nurses. May not be my dream job, right? Because when I was little, this is what I wanted to be. But
Mhm.
these nurses really, I feel like they're going to support me and lift me up. And right. So I appreciate you making that a point because I think a lot of times students, when they come out of nursing school, feel like they have to take that job because they're not
Mhm.
going to get offered another job. And I'm like, there's so many jobs out there. You're going to get a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, and that was the thing too. Like when I was interviewing, so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, please work here. Please work here." Like,
Uh,
yeah, because there's a nursing shortage. And I
yeah.
was like, I would like to consider my other offers, and especially like since I had LPN experience. And then that was another thing too, like realizing some hospitals don't take LPN experience. So that was like a shock to me too. And then just some of the interviews, like when I left, I already knew, like I felt it in my heart. I was like, we're not a good fit. And not to say that they're not great people, but like maybe our learning styles. And I remember one of the questions being like, what are some traits that you don't want in your coworkers? And I was like, wow, that's a great question. Like I wish more people asked that because it's like, if those are the type of people that you have on your unit, I don't want to be there.
Right. Right.
That is a really great question.
Yeah, I was like, they should add that to every interview.
Yeah, but I wonder how many people who are being interviewed would be honest, would be true, right? Because if they
Mhm.
because you want the job, and what if you say like I want I don't want to work with people who are very focused on themselves, right? Like
Mhm.
I want to work in a unit where they support and uplift, and they encourage us to go to conferences, or they encourage us to go back to school because like I wonder if that's not what the unit is looking for, right?
Yeah.
We want you to stay here until you die. You can never go
Yeah.
back to school, right? So you
No,
don't know
it's
how
true.
you don't know how to answer that one. You'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I have
It's
a
a great
question.
point, Kathy.
Exactly, right? Like how honest do you think that we're really going to be with you when you ask us that question? Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. You talked about how in your RN classes or going back to school to get your RN, and in your midst of school, you felt that there was something you needed to do for yourself, which was go to therapy. Was there something like that was like you just had this aha moment, or you were like, I'm just so beaten down, or you know what, I just can't take, or someone said, you know what, why don't you try therapy? Like, was there something that was pivotal that drew you to like your well-being, to focus on, well-being?
At the time, I just had a lot of life stuff
Mhm.
hitting me really hard. Like as
Mhm.
far as my relationships with people that I really cared about. And I'm a type of person, like I'll give you the shirt off my back.
Mm.
Um, especially if I love you, like there's no. And so when my friendships and my relationships were being torn down, it was like really getting to me on
Mhm.
top of just school and work and everything else. So I was like at my breaking point, and so I was like, I need someone else to talk to.
Hmm. I think that we are again this stoic profession where we have to balance work and our life. They never mix, but we are humans, and they bleed into each other, right? And so it's hard. And then when one side's suffering, most sometimes I think before we all started talking about nurses' well-being was we were just like, suck it up, go to work, do your job, suck it up, go home, be a mom, right? Except that's what I was. I was a mom at the doing it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so you've started to go to therapy, but how do you define self-care? Like what is your definition of self-care?
Ooh. So I get a massage every month, once
Love
a month.
it.
If not, I get
Yes,
adjusted.
me too.
My best friend is a chiropractor. So if I will like
Oh
go
my
with
God.
getting an adjustment or getting a massage. And then I also say like Sundays are like my reset days. So
Mm,
like a lot of the time I do like to be out, like out and about or like spending time with family. But I also need like the time for just me to like just be in like silence.
mm,
And so those are the ways that, or like, I don't know, simple things of like trying a new coffee shop or trying a new restaurant or trying a new experience. Like those to me are like the ways that I take care of myself. Like me going to the water park today, that is my like version of taking care of myself. Cause then tomorrow I work a 12-hour shift.
right. It's the things that recharge you, and what is it, whatever your definition of recharge or
Mm-hmm.
whatever dimension of self-care recharges you, that is your self-care.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree that it's not cookie cutter, meditation, guided imagery,
Mm-hmm.
yoga. I mean, it's a little bit for everyone, differences. So,
Mm-hmm.
how is that different though from self-love or self-compassion?
I think like self love and self compassion has to do with like, for me, it's like if you feel good, you look good type of thing. Like,
Mhm.
usually how I look is how I feel. So if I'm like in sweatpants, my hair is not done, then I'm just comfortable, okay? No judgment. But like if I'm going somewhere nice, like I might get dressed up. And so for me, self-love and self-compassion is just trying to be my best self, but also not being so hard on myself and knowing like I'm not perfect at the end of the day. Like human first, nurse second.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
Yeah. I like that human first, nurse second, because I think during the pandemic, all we heard was nurses were heroes. And I used to get really angry at people because a superhero or a hero, right? Especially a superhero, doesn't have feelings, doesn't is not meant to. They're just this robotic thing that's taking care of everyone. Where nurses are human, we have emotions, we have, and I think I like when you said, if you're like how you dress is how you know how you're feeling, and if you're wearing sweats, you're wearing sweats. But I think that's also a form of compassion, right? I'm not
Mhm.
feeling it today, so I'm just gonna take care of me, and how taking care of me is just being in sweats and just kind of hanging out for the day, which I
Mhm.
think is again for for nurses is we have so many like definitions that people give us of self-care, self-compassion, what it's supposed to look like, that it's different for everyone. And when we all just talk about how it looks for each of us, okay, like today I didn't get up and take a shower, right? Like that might not be self-compassion, but I'm not going to be killing myself, right? Maybe I take it a little bit later, maybe I have whatever. So I appreciate that when you bring these things to the forefront for a lot of us, that it's not always the cookie cutter thing that we see or read in a book about how we're supposed to take care of ourselves. Okay, so you told us about your monthly massages or your readjustments, but what is something that you do? What's one self-care practice you do on a daily basis?
I pray.
Wonderful. And how does it help you?
It just sets the tone of my day. So like I try to if I don't pray, which is I usually pray like on my way to work or like before I leave the house, I'll read like the verse of the day. And I also have it set up on my phone like at 10:15. I usually try to like lay down before 10:30, like where it'll automatically like pop up on my phone because we're on our phones all day anyways. So those are just ways, or I'll like listen to praise and worship like if I'm having a bad day. So those are just ways that where I can like come back and like center myself.
Yeah, spiritual self-care is one of the dimensions that we at Fifth Window, talk about, because I think a lot of times people just focus on the self-care, the physical self-care, right? But there's so many more dimensions, and it sounds like for you that connection to spirit is what, again, on a daily basis, re-energizes you, gives you back, maybe pouring back into your cups when your cup gets a little empty, right? So you fill your cup up with your spiritual self-care, which is, I think, for a lot of, and I love that you said that sometimes you pray on your way to work. Like it doesn't have to be something formal in a formalized, environment. It's how your relationship is with whoever you have a relationship with, right? And
Yeah.
to do it, and I think most of us have to commute to work, right? So what a better way to start to get yourself, right? To center yourself before you start in that environment. So what, so you are also another nurse. You're a nurse again. So you're a new to practice nurse by graduating with your associate's degree, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so now you're now getting your bachelor's degree. So what kind of advice can you give to new graduates in maintaining or at least starting to focus on their mental well-being?
I would say at some point you have to put yourself first. If you don't, it's going to just cause you to be burnt out sooner. And being that I've been a nurse for 4 years, even though like now I'm like considered like a new nurse, I think those little things of me praying and getting a massage and resetting on certain days of the week have made a big difference. I still go and take care of patients and I still love them like it was my first shift. If you don't do it now, you'll regret it. And then you're going to be that nurse that's like, oh my gosh, I hate going to work. And for people that don't like being nursing, I always say, just switch your specialty. Like, you don't have to be miserable where you are. You always have more opportunities. And then if you switch and you still say, I'm still not happy, okay, then I would advise you to maybe switch careers. Because at that point, you've at least tried different options. And for whatever reason, it's still not working for you. But for some people, it isn't about compassion. It's not about taking care of patients. For some people, it is monetary or I don't know, being around certain people that, are your friends. Like some people go to work and like that is healing for them because they're around certain people. So whatever that looks like to you, I would just say, just take care of yourself as soon as you can. It doesn't have to be getting a massage. It doesn't have to be going somewhere. Whatever that looks like to you, I would just say do it as soon as you can because you won't regret it.
Are there any, I guess, any, I don't want to say signs and symptoms because we are going to. Are there any things that maybe might give someone a second to step back and pause and be like, oh, I might be impacted by my job?
Yes.
And what
So
do you
sorry.
say? No, I was gonna say, what do you
Uh,
like? What is that? What do you say to people?
we were taught this actually most recently. When you're getting upset at your patients for being on their call light or maybe asking you for something after you just left the room, you're now blaming the patient when they're there for our help. So like that is a sign of like burnout. Like maybe you didn't ask them when you were in there, like, hey, did you need to go to the bathroom before I leave? And now they're on the call light because they didn't feel comfortable asking you when you're in there. So it's like things like that when you start to get angry at your patients for just needing you, or if you already like got on the floor and you're already pissed off and you haven't even seen your assignment, that is a sign of burnout. You don't even know. You might have one patient today and you're already mad. Or if you're like bringing your outside life to work or now it's affecting your care, that's also a sign of burnout.
And if you're bringing your work home,
Mm-hmm.
that's work when work is creeping into your home life that you've
Mm-hmm.
tried to set that boundary. Yeah, that's also probably a sign that, oh, I mean, I might need to step back and just examine
Mm-hmm.
what kind of support do I need, right? Do I need to talk to a peer? Do I need to go to therapy, right? Do I need to set better boundaries at work and not pick up an extra shift? Do
Mm-hmm.
I need, right? So I think those are great pieces of advice for new to practice nurses to have. Do you have any favorite tools that you use for your self care? Like, do you use, well, you have that little reminder about your spiritual journey, when you want to make a spiritual connection. So you've got those like alarm or notifications. So is that an app that you use, or is that
Yeah, it's the Bible app.
hmm,
As far as like other apps, I do have Nurse Grid downloaded, and so I have my schedule
hmm.
throughout for like until like December, and then at the end of the shift, it'll ask for like a shift reflection. I haven't really done that, but I do think that's like a cool tool to like just like kind of like decompress from your shift. But other than that, there hasn't been any other platforms. I did download the Fifth Window app. I'll be honest, I did. And I went through it, but I haven't been active on it. So I do have it on my phone, but I haven't been active on it. But I did like how it, like when you open it, it asks you like how are you feeling? And
Hmm.
then it'll take you like to the different things that you can listen to like a little podcast or you can do an activity. So I did enjoy that.
Hmm. Oh, good. We're glad that you enjoy our app.
Yeah. I was like, I just need to be like more consistent.
It's okay. It's okay. We won't hold it against you.
Yeah.
We're so glad you're here.
Yeah.
It wasn't a prerequisite to get here on our spotlight.
Yeah.
You had to use the app or engage with the app. It was not. So I guess a question I might have for you and kind of wrap up my questions on well-being is there anything that you would like to share with our audience or with new to practice nurses or nurses who've been practicing like me for 30 years that you haven't had a chance to share with us? Like, is there something that you still want to tell us about your journey or your journey to wellness?
Hmm. No, I think
Okay.
so.
Okay,
It's
great.
like
I mean,
there's nothing that on the top of my head that I'm like, oh, I wish I would have said this.
okay. Okay. Again, I really appreciate your candidness, your honesty, and your vulnerability with us and our audience. I think that is, well, one, I think it just makes a person more genuine, right? Um, when you're able to be vulnerable. And also, I just think that the more we talk and the more we are open and share with the nursing world in general, we're going to get there. Eventually, we're going to get there that we matter and our mental wellness is even more important now than ever. So we really do appreciate your complete honesty. And I know that there will be a lot of our listeners and people who view this, after we load it to Instagram and LinkedIn and other platforms who will definitely be able to connect with you because of having some of maybe even the same exact path that you had. Right. So again, I want to say thank you so much for being such a joy to
Oh,
have.
thank you. I always say my mom named me well. I'm like, how did you know I was gonna be so smiley? But fun fact, I used to have
Aw.
braces, and so I was bullied for like a good amount
Oh,
of time. So once I got
Aw.
those braces off, I was like, Mom, This $6,000 smile, girl, it's gonna be everywhere.
And it's
So
a
now
beautiful
it
smile.
It
is.
is a beautiful smile. It's a joyful
Thank
smile.
you.
So it's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Joy. It was so amazing to have you here as our spotlight guest and to share our journey. And could you remind our audience again where they could find you if they want to learn more about you or just follow you on your platform?
Yeah, guys, you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, all at Nursing with Joy.
Yay, amazing. So you all heard her. If you'd like to follow her and connect with her, go ahead and find her at Nursing with Joy. And then we will continue to host our spotlights here at Fifth Window as well. And we have more information about who we are and our platform on our website. So you can learn more about us at www.fifthwindow.com. You could also find links to download our app there where this spotlight will also be posted. So this will be on the app fairly soon. Yay! And we'll let you know too, Joy, when that's out. But you could always refer to our recording there and other wellness activities and resources that we have. So again, on behalf of our Fifth Window team, thank you so much, Joy, for joining us. And thank you all for being here with us today.
Sure.
Kathy, any
Yeah, I
final
just want to
things to
say
add?
you could also find this recording in the Fifth Window app.
Woo!
Yes. It will be there. Yes. Look out for that soon. We'll share that when it's out. And yes, thank you all for joining us. That's a wrap, and we'll see you all at the next one. But
Bye,
thank you.
guys. Happy
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Saturday.
everyone. Happy Saturday.